Can you hear my voice?
Yes, your voice is okay.
Okay. Uh, okay. So I'm from the Electrical and Electronics Engineering department, and this morning I'd like to share a little bit about my own experience using Big Blue Button. So Big Blue Button is a new app integrated into ULearn that allows us to conduct live webinars, live teaching and learning sessions. It's almost like a virtual classroom. You can do almost anything you could do in a classroom, and there are some interesting features about that. So I just do my best this morning to share some of my own experiences using that. So let me begin by just sharing a little screen, my PowerPoint slides, just giving you a rough outline on what I intend to cover this morning. Just give me a second. I call that up. Okay, can everyone see the PowerPoint slides?
Yes, yes.
Okay,
Yes,
so
very clear.
our flow this morning, basically, I'll just be covering in a very relaxed manner 5 main topics. Okay, and please feel free to interrupt me anytime. This is meant to be a very interactive session. I am not an expert on authoritative user. My only advantage is I have been using the Big Blue Button a few months earlier than everyone else because this was first deployed for MSc program online distance learning. So I had a chance to learn and to apply this in December last year. So 5 areas I'll cover today. First, I will just introduce you to the interface to let you have a look at what does the Big Blue Button look like, where all the buttons are, what are some of the features there. Okay, then after we go through what the Big Blue Button can provide you in terms of conducting your webinars, lectures, or your tutorials, we'll go through a step-by-step method. How do you actually include the Big Blue Button into your ULearn course? How do you put up those settings? The third thing after that we will take a brief look is the Big Blue Button allows you to do recordings of your live session. So using BBB, you can conduct a live webinar, you can conduct a live tutorial, but that session, just like Microsoft Teams, you can record everything. And that recording can be made available to students. My experience is students really like it because some of them might not actually understand everything that was said during the session, so they like to actually listen again. And the BBB also gives you some statistics on who was present, who was active, and I'll show you a bit of that. The fourth topic I would talk briefly about is how do you actually put in groupings under ULearn, because BBB, just like all the other activities in ULearn, you can assign BBB to different groups. This would be if you are a very sophisticated user, you like things to be organized well, you might want to have one BBB session for group 1 tutorial, group 2 tutorial, but you do not need this. This is just if you really wanted. And then I'll share a few best practices, about 3 or 4 best practices. So without further ado, I'll jump straight in and share my ULearn site now so that you can actually see what the Big Blue Button looks like. We will go through the introduction to the interface. Okay, let's see. Let me switch this over to my screen. Yes, this is the one. So now can everybody see my ULearn screen?
Yes.
Okay, so this is what a Big Blue Button uh, sort of feature would look like after you've set it up. I'll not go through the setup now yet. I'll just walk you through the features, get you a little excited. Then we'll go through how I added this button. But it appears just as any of your journals or your lectures or your PDFs or your quizzes. It's just an activity that students can go ahead and click. And what I try to do, I find is a best practice, is if I want this to be an interactive session, I make sure I label the session with the date, the time, and the topic, so that there's no confusion about students knowing when this happens and all that. So you go ahead and click on this. This will take you to the interface. And the first interface, if this is a new session, it just tells you that you can join the session. So far, there are no recordings under this session. So if I go ahead and click join the session, this will take me to the main Big Blue Button window. So this is loading. And the first thing it'll ask you is whether you want to join this session using microphone, meaning that you're able to speak, or you just want to listen only. I found from my experience, students tend to like to listen only because many of them, especially the working adults, they like to move in and out of the session and they don't actually want you to know when they're in the session and when they're out. So the majority of students will just go for listen only, and that's fine. But you as the lecturer, the presenter, you should click on microphone. Okay. Then of course your browser will ask you to allow, so you just click allow, and then you will take you to a screen where they will do a little bit of tests. So that's where at this private echo test, you keep speaking and you should be able to hear your own voice through the microphone. And if you can do this, the audio is good, you just click yes. If you cannot hear yourself speak, that is, you don't hear your voice coming out from the speaker or from the headphones, you should click no. So right now, the echo test, I can hear my voice, I click yes. Okay, so this is the main interface of the big blue button. And take note that unlike Microsoft Teams, unlike Skype, unlike Zoom, the students don't really have to install any other app. They only need to be able to log into ULEARN. They have a web browser. They click on that button, they click join, and they come to this big screen. So everyone can see this, right? So on the right side here, this is where my mouse is, my cursor is kind of circulating. This is where we can actually display slides. I'll show you that in a little bit. We will display videos. We can actually scribble things like a whiteboard. So this is where the main teaching activity happens. There is three other sections here. One, there's a section for you to do public chat. That is, you can send text messages to students and students can send text messages to you via this chat. So I'm sending a message here. You can see there's the word hello here. And since I'm the only user here, of course, no one can send me text messages. But you know, this is kind of a useful feature because sometimes when you're presenting, when you're talking, students may want to give you a question, but they don't necessarily want to interrupt the flow of your words. So they may actually just send you a text message here. There's another section here called the shared notes. Okay, and this is where you can actually type out key points or, you know, main ideas, concepts, and this is sort of like a little notepad where you can scribble main points, and you as well as the students will have access to these shared notes. So if you actually want to have a scriber in class, the scriber can actually write this in real time while you are presenting. And actually, I think one of the most interesting features of the big blue button is this one here, the emoticon window. Now, if you look here, this will list all the users that are actually present in the BBB session. So when you are conducting your webinar or your tutorial with live students, you get all the students' names here. And the students have the option, if they were to left click, so if they were to left click on this part here, they are able to set their status. What do we mean by set their status? They can actually give you emoticons. So if they really like what you're saying, they can have a happy face here. So in one glance, you can actually see all the students here who is happy. Or if they're confused, right, they can actually put a confused face here. So in one glance, you can actually see the number of students that are confused. Or if you did something that was really, they really, made them understand, they could give you an applause, right? There's this clap sign, or they could actually give you a thumbs up, which is easier to see than the happy or sad, or they can give you a thumbs down. So this gives you real-time feedback during your lectures as to the level of attention, the level of emotional connection that the students have with you. So we've covered that the students can actually give you feedback in the form of public chat, right? They can just kind of type their concerns or questions or ideas or discussions if they don't want to use audio. Of course, in Big Blue Button, the students also are able to speak. They can interrupt you just like in a normal lecture, right? It's just that many students choose not to do that. There's shared notes. They can type their ideas or points, or you can scribe. And there is the ability for them to actually give you feedback in the form of emotions, right? Like whether they're happy, sad, confused, whether there's a thumbs up, they understand, thumbs down, they don't understand here, okay? And you as a lecturer, if a student is really, really annoying lah. I've never had to use this. You still have the option of muting the user, right? And that gives you control over the classroom, if you will. So now I'm going to move away from all these other panels onto the main screen. And this main screen allows you to do many things. And first, maybe the most important, I'll show you how you can upload some presentation slides to which you can guide your teaching. So you click on this big plus button on the lower left side here, okay, and you can click on upload a presentation. So once you click on upload a presentation, you're taken to the presentation upload screen. You can drag files to upload, or in this case, I'll just click on the browse on files. I'll upload a ready-made PDF here. It's called BBB webinar. And then once I can actually upload more than one, okay. Okay, I can select actually more than one file, and then make sure to click upload. Okay. Now here's a point that I need to mention. Try to do your uploading before the start of your lecture or your session, your BBB session, because uploading typically takes some time depending on internet connection, your file size. And again, as you see, I've uploaded one. I can actually upload multiple files. I can go ahead and upload a book here, and then I can click upload. And so you see that BBB has the capacity to hold in their buffer several different file types. And what I recommend is you do this upload before the start. So you see, for example, this particular book that I'm uploading is about 225 pages. It takes a while, probably about 5 to 10 minutes to upload. So if you do this during valuable interactive session time, you may actually lose some time. So what I recommend is before the start of the lecture, maybe like 15 minutes before, you can come into the session, you can upload all your material here. And what happens then during the lecture is you come to this screen and you will choose using these checkboxes which set of slides, which set of documents you want to display at a particular time. Okay. So because I've started this upload, just wait for it. And I'll just we just wait for it to finish uploading. Okay, so at this point, maybe while waiting for the upload to complete, are there any questions, any comments? Okay, if there are none, okay, so you see, once you start uploading, you're stuck in this screen, and the students also are just sat waiting. So this is the point I wanted to make about you should actually upload all the material you plan to show way before the start of the lecture. And once you start the lecture, you can just go on and click these regions here, which are little check marks. And the file with the check mark is the file that's actively being displayed on the screen. So just go ahead and wait for another 1-2 minutes for it to load up to 225 pages. Okay, great. So now that I've uploaded 2 files, I can easily switch back and forth between them by again clicking on this big plus button. I go to upload presentation. Let's say now I'm actually showing this book. I can shift back to my slides very easily by just clicking on this plus button, this check button, and then I click confirm. And voila, immediately I'm back to this set of slides. And you can navigate forward and backward here using the right button here, okay, and backward here. Or if you use this set here, you can just jump straight to the slide of interest that you want. Okay. And you can stretch, you can fit to width, you can change it to full screen, depending on your preference. So these are just kind of basic features. But what I like most about this is if you move to the upper right corner here, under the tools button, you have the option of actually annotating on your slides in real time. So for instance, if I want to emphasize a point, I click on the pencil, I can choose my color, I can choose the size of my dot, let's say a bigger one, I can actually circle a word while I'm talking. Please pay attention to this. And if I make a mistake, I can click undo on the annotation, or I can just delete all annotations immediately. So I can actually just highlight this point here, I can actually scribble here. And if you want to type some words, you want to write some words, you don't have to choose the pencil tool. It could be interesting for you to also choose the text tool, where you can say important, sorry, you have to actually size this right. Click on the text tool here. You can draw a text box here. and you can also just give like on the spot kind of words you can actually write on your slides, on your teaching materials while you are teaching. Okay, and you can give text, you can draw lines, okay, you can circle, and these annotations are preserved if you navigate forward and backward between slides. And of course, you can undo them in sequence, or you can click clear all annotations and undo them all at one go. Okay, so this is one of the most powerful features I think of the big blue button is during your presentation of materials, you can actually do live annotations on these slides and while you are presenting, and of course you can delete and you can undo them as and how you will, and you can also change the size of your pointer, how thick or thin, you can change the color. And an interesting feature as well is not just you as the instructor can do this, your student, you can also allow your students to actually annotate. So for example, if you actually have a very complex set of materials here, let's say the complex set of content, I can say now, okay, students, which content did you not kind of understand that well? If you go right to the bottom here, where it says turn multi-user whiteboard on, this multi-user whiteboard allows students, okay, all your students to actually also do the scribbling onto the same slide. So now you can see that my cursor here in red has my name attached to it. So each student who has chosen to actually put an annotation, their name will be attached to the cursor. So in real time, you can actually see your students underlining certain materials or putting certain words or putting a little square there or typing text. So this whiteboard becomes a collaborative whiteboard. It's not just a set of slides. It becomes a collaborative whiteboard where the students can also make annotations and give you feedback. So this BBB is actually a rich platform where you can get a lot of interactive feedback between you and your students, and you can do a lot of interactive teaching this way. Okay, and I also want to highlight another feature. Besides all these teaching tools, now you've seen that we can uh, actually load different types of files. You can load slides, you can load books, you can load text. Your students can give you feedback via the public chat. They can type text. So, you know, occasionally you can go back and you can see if there are any other questions there, or they can make notes on the shared notes, and then this can help you review to see if maybe they understand some of the key points that were stated, or you can actually look at the thumbs up and thumbs down or smiley faces here on the emoticons. There's one more also very exciting feature that is in line with active learning. After every 10 or 15 minutes, if you want active feedback, you can decide to conduct a poll. So if you click start a poll here, you can first custom design a question. So let's say I want to ask students if they understood a particular topic. So I want them to only give me a yes or no answer. So I can click yes or no here, okay? And then in real time now, I will say, okay, students, do you understand topic A, which we just discussed? So they will actually receive a polling question where they have to click yes and no, and you can see the poll, the number of yeses, the number of no's being updated in real time. And then you can also publish the results to let the students also see what their other classmates are doing. Okay, and besides yes, no answers, if you wanted to actually conduct a quiz, you can start a poll where maybe you have either a true false answer or ABCD answer. Here again, you can actually have the question listed here on the main screen here, and then you get the results A, B, C, D here, and you can actually see the results of the polls, how the students answer. So polling is a feature that allows you to get response from the student, but the question should actually be delivered via the main teaching interface or via audio, right? Okay, you can see the polling results are here on the slide as well. So again, you have rich annotation, rich ways in which you can actually guide the students' learning. So I'm going to pause here for a minute or two just to see if there are any questions from any of the esteemed lecturers. Okay, is there any feature that I've glossed over very quickly and that you'd like me to repeat? Okay, if there's none, let me highlight something that, yes, please go
Yeah,
ahead.
this is Lydia. I
Hi.
just want to ask your experience. I believe you've done this with some MSc students,
Yes, yes.
right? Do you find that you need to go over the basic steps with the students themselves, or do they pick up easily?
At the beginning of the first session, because there was no structured guidance on this, yes, I will just highlight a few key points to the students. I think if you want to use some of the more fancy features here, you have to walk them through your students. But the way I did it was, okay, displaying these slides and just teaching from this. This is fairly this is fairly intuitive, so I didn't have to mention. But at the start, I actually wanted them to give me feedback via the public chat because I wanted everyone to be able to see their classmates' questions. Because if they start giving the questions over audio, some people may miss it. So I actually just alerted them to the chat as well as the emoticon feature. So I didn't actually use the polls because they were very expressive over the chat. And again, in the third session this morning, this is just the first session. The third session, I will show you a live recording of the MSc students actually interacting with me on a BBB session. So you can see their interaction and the way they actually put in the text and the chat in real time. So I'll show you that a little later this morning. So
Okay, thank you.
yeah, thanks, Dr. Leah. So I find that you don't need to overwhelm them with all the features. If you are starting your first session, it's probably just good if you choose one mode of feedback and you ask them to interact. So I've not allowed them to take control of the board. I've not allowed them to actually present with their users, but I'm just highlighting that these are things that you can include into your session at a much later point when you and the students are very familiar with this interface. But of course, for the first session, you probably want to go slow and just get some basic feedback from them. And my feedback from the students is they really like this interface. I think BBB, they rarely experience any lags and they're able to see this.
How many students do you have?
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't catch that question.
How many students do you have for the session?
How many students did I have? So for that session, we actually had only 10 students, which maybe about 9 came online, and then as the session, it was a 2-hour session, after 1 hour, a few dropped off because I was recording the session. But that's okay because this is to provide the flexibility for the students. So this has not been tested, I think, for larger classes. So it would be good to keep that in mind. That's a good point, Dr. Kami.
The 10 students, they have to sign up in ULEARN first, right? Then only the user ID will be carry over.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So students will need to be able to access your course website. So this is example of one course website. And then they should actually enter by clicking on the big blue button, the big blue button point. So what they will see, if the class is started, they can just go ahead and join the session. And if the class started, they'll see that the session has been going for about 10 minutes, 13 seconds already. And there's only like one moderator and how many students in the session. Okay.
And the quizzes just now.
Yes.
If you want it to be graded, will it be captured in ULEARN?
Okay, so in this sense, this poll here is actually not meant for grading, but the poll here is actually more for live feedback from you. You still have the option of actually deploying a quiz via the standard ULearn method. Okay, and then you can actually, I think if you wanted to actually get it captured in ULearn, you should actually get your students to actually log on to ULearn. Okay, and then they can go straight to the quiz part here, right? And then they can actually do this quiz through the standard ULearn interface while they are attending the big blue button session. So if you want the grades to be captured, my recommendation is use the standard ULearn. Big blue button polling and quiz here is more for the presenters' feedback, how you tweak your live session. Okay, more questions, please. Okay, if there are no further questions, let's proceed to other features. Besides the slide and whiteboard, what I find is you are also able to share your screen. Okay, let me find where's the button. I thought it was Share external video. Okay. Yes. So if slides and books are not enough, you can scroll all the way down here on the right side, the bottom right here, where you can share your screen. And sharing your screen I found has been useful in a few ways. Number one, I find that when students start asking more questions, and this is more true for a interactive session uh, tutorials, um, I find that it could be useful. I can call up a Microsoft Word document. So can you see my Microsoft Word document?
Yes.
Yes. So you can start actually, if this isn't a tutorial, it needs a little bit of practice, but you can actually start typing equations. You can actually start typing answers. You can actually use the tools here to actually draw. And then these set of ad hoc drawings or writings or scribblings can also become an extra set of notes, because I find that sometimes as the discussion progresses in Big Blue Button, there's not enough space on your slides and your scribbling, and it's not intuitive enough. So I've had to actually go back to, like, for example, Microsoft Word here, where, if you want to type a little bit more for the students to read, let's say they're asking for an explanation of the answer, and then they're actually not sure how you are doing the calculation or how the working is done. So if you can anticipate that, of course, that's better if you prepare PDF documents in advance. But if you cannot, or it's an ad hoc, then you can actually use Microsoft Word to actually augment your tutorial sessions. Besides that, the share screen mode is also useful. Let's say, for example, if you want to point them to some online resources. So in my own class, I've used it, for example, to actually highlight maybe some open source software. So here you can actually see a website of an open source software where you might want to walk through some documentation, or to show them where is the location to download the software, where should you actually look on these online resources, where should you pay attention. So going back to the Big Blue Button now, besides sharing your slides and maybe any PDF documents, you are also able to share your screen, which gives them access to any software that you can run on your computer. Okay, so even in future, if ITMS gives us access to Panopto, which I understand is supposed to allow us to create our own videos and our own teaching materials, so it should have maybe more friendly interface that you can do drawing and things like that. You can also use the share screen method to actually walk the students through interactively. Besides sharing screen, you can also share an external video. And here, sorry, I went too quickly. You click on the plus button. This is the last option here. You share an external video, and you just add the URL link to the video. And for myself, for example, I've uploaded certain videos onto YouTube. Just go ahead and grab it here. Okay, so if you were to go ahead and just copy the YouTube link and place that in here, so you can see that the Big Blue Button presentation screen, you're able to play a video. So in the case that you actually want to pay more attention to your students' responses, it's entirely possible for you to pre-record your lecture or your presentation in 10-15-minute segments, play it in real time, and then you can pay attention actually to the chat features or the polling or to the response from the students and answer for that. So that might actually reduce the pressure and the novelty of actually presenting all in one go, if you find that's helpful for you. So just to recap, we've gone through the feedback system for the students. You can public chat, shared notes, polling, emoticons, and they can also give you feedback on audio. We've gone through the various ways you can present material to the students. You can start by uploading presentations, which are just nothing else but your slides in PDF form, or book documents or tutorials in PDF. You can actually scribble on the shared documents here. You can share your screen, which is by pressing this button here, which allows you to show them in real time any app that you're running on your PC, or you can show them a web browser link, or you can actually just share live videos, be it your own material or material that you actually want to run and play during the session. and this gives you a lot of flexibility and freedom for you to present on this. And in case you actually wanted to see if your students were online or not, but I don't really recommend this. Like, you can also just share your webcam like this, and BBB to some extent can actually you can actually visualize. So now I'm sharing my webcam. You should be able to see my face here. And if your students are sharing their webcam, you can actually see their faces here as well. This could be useful, for instance, in the case of a Viva, where you actually want to see that the person presenting or the person giving you feedback is actually the student that you think is doing this. This is in the case when you actually are conducting something where the identity is important. But if you are just conducting a live webinar or tutorial, and in the spirit of online learning and open learning, actually, I think we should not pay too much attention to attendance, because the key point here is this session. If you click this button here, and I recommend that you do this for all your sessions, if you click it here, this will start recording the entire session. And recording the entire session is very beneficial because it allows absent students to review the material. It allows students who have been present and active in the session to also review the material. And it also forms a kind of evidence for both CQI as well as for audit process in the future. So if there were cases where people were concerned, did you do enough of delivery? Was the content covered? And again, in the case of open and distance learning, where we are putting on online platform, we also want to show the evidence that the classes were conducted, the tutorials were conducted. Then the recording is like the best evidence of that. And the recording also have different additional features, which it actually gives you the statistics of the interactivity of the students. Okay. So now I've started recording this session. Now I'm going to pause this session. Okay, I'm going to stop it. And I'm going to finish my session here. I'm going to end the meeting here. So I end the meeting, this meeting will close. I can give feedback here. Okay, now ending this meeting, the reason I end this meeting is because I want to now show you what happens after you have recorded a session and conducted a meeting. So we go back to our course here. If you remember, this was the button we clicked. Okay, if you click it, your recording will show in this portion of the big blue button at this side here. But you have to give big blue button, I think, a few minutes to maybe an hour or so for it to actually display the recording here. So in the interest of actually showing you that recording, let me switch screens to a recording that I've already done, so you can actually see what it looks like. Okay, let me see. Let me switch my screen again. I think this one, yes. So if you look here, can you see my ULEARN X screen? So I have this big blue button session here in 2019, and if I click on this, you will see that there was a recording of a past session done on 19 December, and students can go in and access that recording by clicking on the video button here. And here straight away you can see the date the recording was done, the time, of course this is a Hong Kong Standard Time, and the duration of the recording. And you can also control whether this recording is made visible to students or you want to hide it from students just by clicking this I. So if you click on video, if you right click on it, you can actually save this file as a raw video file. Sorry, this is later. So if you click the video here, this will take you actually to the video of the recording. Yeah, if you right click on this, you can actually save the video file as a raw MP4 video. So I can save this as a MP4 video or a MPEG video. Okay, so this is if you actually want to have your own record of the session without going through the ULEARN and Big Blue Button session, right? So here you see I can actually save it on my desktop, but I won't do that. Okay, so students can go in and they can click play. Okay, so I'm going to actually accelerate the session here. So this is where I'm sharing my screen and I'm walking through with the students like a live example of how to do a particular tutorial question. Okay, I'm going to move it a little ahead. And now you can see on the right here, particular student has started asking me questions. Yes, so you can, I hope you can hear that the students are also giving me audio feedback, and some students are also giving me textual feedback. Okay, so as you proceed with the discussion, you can actually see that you have a written record of all the questions that was raised. So this is really nice for you to consider to use in terms of CQI if you actually want to go back and analyze how well the session was done, what was the aspects of the lecture that was covered. So this is an example of the red parts are actually annotations that I made in real time during the presentation. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to pause to ask if there are any questions about the video recording with BBB.
So when you record, it's stored in BBB servers or in ULEARN?
Okay, great question, Dr. Kamil. My understanding is this is all stored on ITMS server. And my understanding from Puan Hanan is that ITMS will store all of these on the ULEARN for 1 year. So I've been requesting for them to consider storing with a longer timeline, but I think this is something that maybe at a higher academic level, UAC or Senate, this must be an instruction given. Having said that, we have a very powerful option to actually back up the entire content of our ULEARN site. And I would recommend that every lecturer be able to do this. And when you back up, you actually have the option of storing the entire content, the entire ULEARN course layout that includes all the videos, all the PowerPoints, and the sessions, the way that your tutorials, your quizzes are laid out. You capture all of that. You can save that on the ITMS server as well. You can download a local copy. So I recommend you can do both. And at the end of the session, I was actually thinking of walking the esteemed colleagues through this step by step. But please bear in mind also that if you like, you can also right click on the video here and you can save each individual video for your own personal record purposes. So there are multiple options of backupping the video. Number one, you can save your own personal copy. Number two, there is a copy that will be stored on the ULearn website, and this is ITMS controlled servers. My understanding is UTP SOP is for 1 year. And number three, you can make a copy of this in ULearn format so that if you copy it and you can save it in your local machine, and you can later on restore this whole thing completely in future editions of your courses without having to redo a lot of the design of the online course.
BBB, we subscribe or we own the server?
Yes, my understanding is this is a pay for per use. It's a pay for use app. I'm not sure what is the payment model, but based on the recent comments, I think we are charged based on the number of users. That's why at the end of March, I think there was an approval process where our DVCA had to approve increasing the number of users, and ITMS had to integrate and prepare this to actually increase the number of users for the system.
No issue of security or
Uh,
content.
Also a great question. I don't feel qualified to answer that, Dr. Kamil.
No, because
But
some of
it's a
us
base.
use Zoom and
Yeah.
Google meeting and all that.
Yeah.
So those public area, there are not limitations. Basically, the issue of Zoom, right? So we don't want that to happen.
Yeah. So I think maybe addressing that point, BBB is accessible only through ULearn. So this is great because students don't need to install additional apps. They just need a web browser, which means most likely they can also see this on their mobile phones because you only need a web browser to access ULearn. The files are actually stored in ITMS servers, and you can make local copies on your own. Yes.
So this BBB work on mobile phone as well?
I have not really stress test this because it was a bit unanticipated, but because it's a web-based interface, I presume they would have looked into that. This is something that probably we should also try it out. But sorry, Dr. Kamil, I've not. I
No,
don't
it's
know.
okay. It's okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Okay, so I really like this software. It has really changed, on seeing this introduced at the end of December, it has really changed my view of our capacity to run online courses. So that's why I'm very keen to promote its use in UTP itself. Now, I will proceed to actually show you the added features that if you record a video, so if you don't record a video of your BBB session, you won't get this feature. But if you record a video, you can go ahead and click on the statistics button here. And this gives you very interesting statistics. It tells you the duration of your course, the number of students, and the number of moderators. Moderators will be you, the lecturer. And of course, 2 or 3 lecturers can also join and co-conduct the session. It gives you the number of students who actually spoke. And it tells you the number of students who actually messaged. And it tells you the number of students who use emojis and who raise their hands. And you can go down and see individually each student, how long they spend on the platform. So like this student left halfway, this student left halfway, this student left halfway. This one was like really, really early, they left. And it gives you an activity score. So you can straight away see who was the most engaged in the session and who was the least engaged. And I think this tool is actually useful for CQI. Let's say you want to reflect and you are reviewing the performance of your student in class, and you want to see level of interactivity, level of engagement, and the activity score does not just mean audio. I think it's a mixture of audio, messaging, emojis, raising hands. Okay, and then of course you have the results of polls, but I did not run polls in this session, so of course the results won't be there. So this is a very nice capture screen for both CQI and audit, and it's a value-added thing that you can actually see, and you can actually keep track how long, how involved they were in this session. So these statistics is also a very nice plus point for BBB sessions, only if you record. If you do not record, this is not available to you. Okay. All right. If there are no questions, if you have the questions, please interrupt me. If there are no questions, I would like to next go through the next step, which I'll walk you through the step-by-step method of actually including BBB into your course. Okay, let me go ahead and share a different screen. I think it's this one.
Dr. Eric?
Yes, was there a question? Yes.
Yeah. Dr. Eric, so it means that if we don't record the session, we cannot see interactivity and participation. Am I right?
That's right, Dr. Noreen. If you do not record the session, you have no information on interactivity and participation, no permanent.
And I won't see the dashboard at all, is it?
You will not see, okay, you will not see also a recording of on the dashboard here. Okay, you will not see that as well. Yeah, so it's just like a session that happened and then there's no record of that. So I urge as a best practice, the first thing you should do at the start of the session is always press record. If you don't want to keep a record of the session, you always have the option of deleting the video, but you cannot choose to record the session after the session is not done. So always just record the session. If you don't really want to keep a copy, you can always delete. Okay, so just be a little bit patient in your own case. Like here, again, we did a recording just now. It takes a little time for BBB to actually put the recording up here. I'm not exactly sure what is that time window, but I would say if you wait for a day or so, that would be a reasonable time. Okay. Okay, are there any more questions thus far on recording with BBB, live, the features of BBB, the statistics? If you want to have a look again at the recorded session. Okay, if there are no more questions at this point, if there are, you can ask again. Let me show you how to add a BBB session. So you can go ahead and click add on activity and resources. Normal way, just how you would add a assignment or a text. And here, there's an icon called big blue button BN. You select that and you click add. Okay, here you are presented with a bunch of settings, and let me just walk you through all the settings. You don't actually need to use all the settings, but I can just describe them to you. So the instance type, BBB allows you just to have a room with activity. That means you disable the recording feature, but you allow students to join in interactively. They allow you to only have a session where you just record. So this is in the case where you actually wanted to prepare a video or webinar, but you didn't want students to be involved. You wanted to prepare like a YouTube video or something. You could actually just have a recordings only instance type. I would just say select the default instance type, room activity with recordings. Then you may or may not have the students join. You may or may not have the recordings, a lot of flexibility. And you can go ahead and type a name for your virtual classroom. And this is the name that will appear on your ULEARN course website as the activity. And my recommendation for the best practice is if you want this to be a live site, please put in the date, time, and a brief title on the topic. And you can click here, send notification, and send notification means all your students will receive an email saying that this has been set up. This welcome message is the a little bit of text that the students will see in their chat section when they join the BBB. You don't have to put anything here, but I would just recommend as a best practice, you can put your course. Put your course name here. You can put the session, date, and time. The reason is because this gives your students some visual feedback. They know that A, they've joined the correct session, that's the correct course, and they joined at the correct time and the correct date. And this is important if you actually have more than one BBB session. So this is depending on how you want to structure your BBB session, but my own practice is every interactive session I conduct, I have a separate BBB window because I want to keep a video recording of each individually. And you also can choose whether the students can come in and start talking to each other, or if they wait for moderator means they cannot start until you are present. Okay. And of course, you can choose which participants are enrolled, and you can actually put a schedule for the session. That is, you make the students able to join only at a certain date, and you can't join after a certain date. But this is only fine tuning. If it's perfectly fine if you don't enable all these. The session can be available throughout the year. It's okay. Like you don't need to set all of this. And finally, something that might be of interest if you're conducting tutorials is you might want to allow only certain groups to access certain sessions. Okay, right. So the simplest settings that you need to ensure is just ensure is room activity recordings, put your classroom name, put in a welcome message, and yeah, that's the most simplest way you can set this up. You can go ahead and save and return to course. Okay, so let's wait for ULEARN to set this up. And voila, you have a topic here. Okay, you have your new BBB session here. And because I actually had said this was session was to be by group, it put that it would follow a grouping for assignment 1. So your students can now just click on this and they would be able to join the session. And again, the reason I select the grouping just now was to illustrate another feature. This same session, you can allow multiple different groups to join the session according to their groups. So group A, the students in group A will only be able to see students in group A and talk to you. Students in group B will only be able to see students in group B and talk to you. So group A and group B, depending on how you set, they may not be able to interact with each other. So this would be a feature useful for conducting tutorials. So if I want to just do a group base, I can just go for group A setting and join a session which is only enabled for group A. But if I actually wanted to have all the participants, I can also join a session that is only enabled for all participants. Okay, and so these are, and so you see the useful, a little bit of background info. Students come in, they straight away see the course name and the session date and time. So they know that they are in the right session here. Okay, so I can stop this right now, can end the session. Okay. So I'm going to pause at this point to see if there are any questions from among esteemed colleagues on. So what we have covered to up to this point is I've introduced you to the interface and the features of BBB. You've seen an example of a recording and the student interaction settings. How would they look like? And we've talked a little bit about saving the content, the videos. We've seen also how to set up BBB in your ULEARN. I'll just give another minute or so if there are any questions. If they are not, then we'll jump to how do you actually set up group activities, which is tutorials. You've seen how to do that, yeah. Yes, there's a question, please.
Hi, Doc.
Hi.
If you don't mind, can you just repeat back on the interface of the BBBs?
Sure. Yes. So if
Just a quick one.
yeah, if everyone's okay, I'll just go back and run through the interface of BBB. Okay, let me just quickly share my ULEARN screen. Where is it? It should be. No, it's not this one. It should be this one. Okay, do you see my ULEARN screen? Okay, if you see my ULEARN screen, great. So the students will come here. This is your course landing page with the topics, and then they'll just go ahead and click on the BBB activity here. Once they click on the BBB activity, they will have the option to click on join the session. So when they join the session, they'll be immediately taken directly to the BBB interface, the room. Okay, and if they have the option of just listening only, which means they don't have a microphone and they won't be able to give you audio feedback, but you as a lecturer should always select microphone so that you can speak and they can hear you. You'll be taken to a screen where it will say do an echo test, and here is where you should speak into your microphone and you should hear your voice echo back through the speaker or your headphone. If that you hear that, you click yes. If not, you hear no, because if you don't hear that, the students will not hear your voice. So once you answer BBB, this screen here on the right is your main presentation screen where you will show slides, documents, videos, or even your screen. I recommend as a best practice, you always start when you see this screen, you go by start recording first. So don't forget to start recording with the button on the top here. So once this is recording, great, you will have a record of your session. Okay, so this is the presentation side. And you can add presentations material by going to the bottom left button here, the big plus sign here. Do you see it on the bottom here?
Yes.
You click plus here, you're able to upload a presentation. You click on upload presentation, you'll be taken to this screen. I recommend that you upload your presentation 10 to 15 minutes before the start of your session because the uploading takes time. You click on browse on files, you can choose PDF, PowerPoint, Word, but BBB recommends that you choose PDF because to try to minimize. So I always try to convert even my PowerPoint slides to PDF. After you selected the file, you must remember to click upload because the file does not upload until you click the upload button. Okay? And you're able to upload multiple files, not just one. So 15 minutes before your session, I recommend you go here, click the plus button, upload presentation, upload all the files that you want to cover, and you can move back and forth between files by clicking on this check button here. And let's say you click confirm, the screen will change. You go back here, upload presentation, you click this check button, you click confirm, the screen will change. And you go to this upper right hand corner, the tools, you can choose the pencil tool. Okay, you can choose the text tool, okay, to type text. And this is for interactivity. And the whiteboard here allows you to give your students the opportunity to also scribble on your board. Okay. Besides this, you also have the option to share an external video here, and this could be any kind of web link, YouTube link. And you also have the option to also share your screen by clicking on this button, and then you choose whether your entire screen or a particular application, and you can share your web browser and all that. So these are the tools that are available to you as an instructor to present your material. Now the tools that are available to you to receive feedback is you can click on the public chat here and you can type questions, or you can respond to your students, or mostly your students will respond to you. You can look at the shared notes here, which is basically a shared document where you can type, your students can enter the main points, and you can actually have a scriber to record ideas and points, and you can periodically go back to review this, right? If your students, as a feedback, your students, do they get the main idea of what you're saying? And every student will be listed here. So you get a whole list of individual students' name, and they have the option, if you go to this icon here and you left click and you go to set status, you left click on set status, you can raise your hand, that is the equivalent to asking a question. You can give, your students can give a happy, sad face, thumbs up, thumbs down, applaud. So you can just visualize here to see if your students are basically understanding or how they are reacting to your material. And the final feedback tool, you click on this action button, the plus here, you can start a poll. The poll, please remember, no questions will appear here. You have to present the questions verbally by audio, or you have to present it on the material here by slides. But you can choose the manner in which the students answer, that is by yes or no, true or false, A, B, ABC, A, B, C, D. So if I click yes or no, in real time, the students will click response, and you can see how many percent yes, how many percent no. And I believe you can also see the individual students' responses here. So you can actually interact with the students. Okay, and of course, if you require to verify the identity of your student, you can ask them to enable their webcam so you can actually see their face. Okay, so I think that covers the main features of Big Blue Button. And don't forget, you end your meeting here.
Okay. Thank you, Doc.
Okay, great. I can end the session here. So, okay, your video recording will only be made available after you end the session. There it is. So now you see that we did a previous recording much earlier at 10 a.m. this morning. It was almost an hour-long duration. We can now look at the video, the statistics, and also observe the notes. So if I go to the video here, so this was done this morning. You can see this is the video. Okay, so you can see the video. You can click on the statistics. This is the statistics of this morning. There's only one person, of course, because all of you were not entered in as participants. So the time and all that was here. Okay, and then I conducted one poll 1, and there was no responses. And you also have a copy of all the notes that was prepared during the session. Okay, so this is good for scribing, as I mentioned. Okay, if there are no other questions, let me go quickly over what we call the grouped activities. And let me just emphasize that you do not need to understand this part in order to conduct tutorials. It's perfectly fine if you just have a general BBB session like this one here, where everybody can come in and you just have different students come in at different times. That will just work just fine. But if you are someone that likes to explore the detailed features, okay, then you can enable group assignments here, where the participants can actually choose their group, and they can have the option of joining a session with all the participants or with only particular groups. Okay. And I think the main point here really would be to walk you through how do you set up groups in ULEARN. Some of you may already know. And how do you enable the grouping feature in BBB? So let's just quickly go through how you set up groups in ULEARN. Okay, let me find that. See, it's not participants. Okay, so if you were to scroll down on the left part here, looking at the menu bar on the left here, you scroll down all the way to the menu bar that says administration. Make sure you click on users and you select groups. You have the option of creating a group. Okay, you can go all the way down. So these are the groups I've already created. but I can create a new group, okay? And this is the way if you wanted to create groups manually. So you might create group, you can create G1, maybe you can say Tuesday session 9 a.m. Okay, I just create this group. Okay, then I save the changes. Okay, and if you want to manually add students, you see group 1, Tuesday at 9 a.m. You can add students. And you can manually select from the list of students you have. Okay, you select the name, you click add on the left, select name, click add on the left, and then you can click back to groups. And you can find that in this group, these 3 students have been assigned. Of course, this is a very manual process. You can also choose the auto create groups, which I think is better, much preferred. Auto create groups, the naming scheme, you just give maybe group this, okay, and you can auto create, that is the ULEARN software will actually give you the desired number of groups, and they just divide the number of students you have over the number of groups, and that will be the number of students per group. Or if you choose to say, I want each group to have only 2 members, then you choose members per group, you set the number of members per group, and then the software will automatically find out how many groups you can set. Okay, and you can actually just choose select members in the role student, and you just and here this is to actually create the groups, but you can also have different groups for different activities, and each activity is called a grouping. So if you want to have one type of group for assignment 1, you should actually have grouping names, right? Assignment 1, assignment 2, assignment 3. But if you want to retain the same group for all the assignments, all the tutorials in the session, then it's enough to just have a group here, and you don't have to enable grouping. So you can just go ahead and submit. Okay, and so you can see I have a bunch of new groups created here. Group A with 2 people, Group B with 2 people, Group C with 2 people, etc. So these were the new groups that were created. Okay, so if you have already created your groups, then the only remaining step for you would be when you add the big blue button activity, this one here, you only need to ensure under common module sessions, common module settings, group mode, you can go for separate groups or visible groups, and you don't have to choose a grouping, but you can go for separate groups or visible groups. Okay, separate groups means the students can only join a group and see the students in their own group. Visible groups means they can see other groups that are present. Okay, so I would just say, when in doubt, because I don't really think it's that much of a secret, you can also go for visible groups, but if you want to do separate groups, that's fine. So you can add the groups here, click on add group, and then save and return to course. Classroom link. Okay. Right, so you can see here, because I do not belong to any group, I'm not able to click this activity. So that's the downside. If you don't enable the grouping correctly, your students might not be able to see the activity. Okay, so this is the downside of using separate groups. So I can just go ahead and go in and change the setting on this. I change it to visible groups. And save and return the course. Okay, anyway, the grouping, the students can actually choose their group here in order to join the session. Okay, if I'll just pause a little bit to take any questions at this point. If not, we'll move on to the last section on best practices. Okay, if there are no questions, I will just kind of review some best practices that I try to follow, and just not many. I've mentioned this throughout the session this morning. First, if you want to put in a scheduled session, I always recommend that your activity must contain the date, the time, and a brief description of the topic that will be discussed. Second, I found this to be very important. Interactive learning, discussion among students is actually an important part of open and distance learning. And in an on-campus settings, our students are able to meet as a group in their dorms or in the canteen or in the library at their own time, right? To do group discussions, to do group learning. But now that they are all back home in their own homes or in the dorms and there's movement restriction, social distancing, they are missing that opportunity to actually interact with their classmates. And here's where Big Blue Button gives a really fantastic way to interact. You can create a session, a BBB session, and do not put any date or time or grouping restriction on them. And students can then go online at some time that they agree to do. And if they just join the BBB session at the same time, they're able to do teleconferencing and web conferencing with no additional resources or apps that is required of them. They only need mobile phone or computer with access to internet and a web browser. So if you allow a BBB session where you don't impose any time constraint, any user constraint, the students are able to use maybe your chat feature on ULEARN in order to find a good schedule, a time when maybe group A might want to meet at 10 p.m. or group B might want to meet at 8:30 a.m., right? So they can, among themselves, using the ULEARN chat features in your course, they can decide their own among their own groups when they want to come online to have group discussions. And they are able to also use the BBB as a medium to conduct interaction among themselves. So I really recommend this as a best practice for all courses. So is there a question?
Dr. Eric.
Yes.
Hi, Ina here.
Yes, Dr. Ina.
Just asking, is there a problem in terms of bandwidth for the students if they want to use it back home? There's always this issue of internet connectivity. So with this, are there certain expectations of what bandwidth the student should have? Thank you.
Okay, it's a great question, Dr. Ina. I think this is still an untested aspect of BBB. ITMS have advised us that a minimum of 512 kbps is needed. So 512 kbps is it's not that high a bandwidth requirement. I think if you have a mobile phone or even a mobile Wi-Fi, this is possible. Let me make a bit of a mention. If you go on BBB and you do not enable video, that is, you disable your video, you just have audio, the bandwidth requirements will not be so high. If you do not share very large files and you do not have a lot of scribbling or real-time drawing, the bandwidth requirements will also not be too bad. But when you have multiple users, let's say a class of 100, a class of 200, a class of 400, which is some of the M&H courses and the fundamental applied sciences have that, I really do not know how BBB and the UTP infrastructure will scale, because we've only really tested this on small groups up to about 10 people. And these are students that have high bandwidth connection because they were connecting from their company side, Intel, or they pretty much can afford high bandwidth connections. So I'm sorry, Dr. Anna, we don't really have enough experience on whether this will work on large number of students. So I think Puan Hanan and ITMS team are on standby and ready to actually hear from all the lecturers on your experiences with BBB and whether this can actually cope for a large number of students and how would the quality go. If live sessions fail, I suppose one of the methods I could suggest would be you can use BBB to pre-record your sessions, okay? And then you can actually conduct smaller tutorial sessions on BBB, which would be maybe between 10 to 40 students per session. That could be one possibility. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Doc.
Sure. Thanks for your question. So if there are no other questions, let me show you the final. The other best practice would be please record where it's possible. Always record all your sessions. If it turns out to be a particularly bad session that you're not proud of, you're always free to delete it at a later point in time. But please record because students really love the capability to revisit the online session. So I had very strong and positive feedback from my own students during their revision. They really like, even if they were present for the session, they really like being able to go back to the particular explanation and the video. And this gives them a lot of flexibility because even some students, depending on maybe their bandwidth problems or their scheduling problems, they may not be able to stay for the entire online session. So you are still making available your explanation, your answers to their classmates' questions available to them to come back at a later time. Because if, for example, they are at a location where the bandwidth is poor, they may make a little bit of sacrifice. They may actually wake up at 1 or 2 a.m. in the morning when most people are sleeping to actually try to access the videos. This is an option that's always open to them. And B, recordings are also very nice evidence for CQI, for you to reflect on the delivery of your material as well as for audit purposes. And now I'll go to the last best practice is always save and backup your Moodle course. So let me quickly switch windows. Let me share my ULEARN window, 9th April. I go back to the main course page. Okay. Sorry, let me just find this because I also forget where all these buttons are sometimes. Where is the backup button? Yes. Okay. So let's say you have spent a lot of time, which many of you would have spent a significant amount of time these couple of weeks, fine-tuning your course, right? You prepare a course where you have your announcements, your class organization, your forum, you have all your material here, you have your files, you have your videos, your PDF, you have your link videos, you have your quizzes, it's such a pain typing all the quiz question, and you don't want to do it all over again next semester. How do you avoid that? Okay, the best practice here would be you look for the toolbar on the left that says administration and you click on backup. There's a bunch of daunting settings which frankly speaking I don't really understand all of them as well, but when in doubt just click everything. But for this particular ULEARN, I think ITMS has disabled a lot of features. So you can just go to next. This is just saying that you're going to back up all these sections here. So you just make sure that all the buttons here are checked. You click next. Okay, and you click on perform backup. This will take a little bit of time. The backup will be large, ranging from several tens of megabytes to several hundreds of megabytes, depending on how much material you have online. But essentially what a backup allows you to do, it allows you to redeploy all these settings, the quizzes, the tests, the documents, the videos, with just a few clicks in your future courses. And I'll show you how that can be done. So I'm backing up one particular course that I have designed and I'm running this semester. So I continue, the backup was successful. If the backup is successful, you should be able to see under your user private backup area, the name of your backup and the time that it was backed up. So today we backed up, this is my backup from today. I always recommend you click on download because you are able to save a copy of this file in your own hard drive or in your own cloud, and you don't fully rely on ITMS backup, right? So this backup will reside on ITMS servers. My understanding from Puan Hanan is this backup will not be erased. This is your own private backup. So whatever files you store here will remain in your account for the rest of your life or until the rest of your time in UTP. But courses that you display will be deleted after a year. So you can always restore from this region. And of course, if you want a bit more surety, you can always click on download here so that you yourself can keep your own copy of your backup. Okay. So now that I've got the backup, let's say if I made a mistake, or ITMS does some kind of upgrade, and your site has been wiped out. What do you do? Well, you can always go back to your course here. So I'm going to go back to my course here, where I show you. Okay, let's say this is your new course and it's kind of empty here. And I want to populate this course based on my backup. I go all the way again to administration. I click on restore. Okay, so if you have saved it in your local hard drive, you can actually choose a file and drag and drop that file. Or if you want to restore directly from ITMS website, so I can restore this file here that I backed up this morning. I can click restore here. And what this is doing, it is replicating everything from my design course. Okay, so I can either merge or I can delete the contents of this course. Right, so you have the option of actually having which part of the course you want to return. Okay, so you can go through the details in your backup, in your restoration. But as long as you backed up everything, you can always go through different configurations of restore to see which one suits you best. Okay, so it's actually restoring the content to my new course. So it takes a while. And you click on next.
Look, Eric, just
Yes.
to interject a while.
Sure.
Sorry to ask.
Yep.
Is there a limitation to the video size and things that you upload?
Okay, this is also a great question. So when you upload videos, let me highlight that you have option of either uploading the video onto ITMS website and then giving the link, or you can upload to YouTube and then give the link. To be honest, I do not know how much space ITMS has allocated per user. I think Puan Hanan had mentioned before it was just a couple of gigabytes. So I believe at some point you will run out of space on the ITMS website, which is why I always advocate please download and save a local copy, because our Microsoft OneDrive, I think, has been upgraded to 1 terabyte storage. So you have plenty of storage on OneDrive. You can always put it to your OneDrive, the Microsoft login. Yeah. So you can notice. Okay, so I'll just jump back here. You can notice previously there was my course. Just now there was only the big blue button, and now it has totally been updated to reflect the material that I presented on the other course. So this is the benefit of saving a backup of your course. You can instantaneously replicate most of the items. Now, I have been trying to engage and persuade ITMS to also allow us to back up user data. The reason is because if you start recording sessions of Big Blue Button, if you start having the users to do online tests and you have your online assessment, the entire ULEARN course becomes an evidence for auditing. And if this is done right, we may move away from our current OBE and cost portfolio settings, and the ULEARN, the complete ULEARN setting could actually become our entire backup and our entire material that we can show the auditors during the audit. Okay, because ULEARN also has the ability for you to assign grades under a particular outcome, and then we can actually show how the course outcomes are met and all that. It's just that these features haven't been enabled. We've not actually been able to do this. So among the listeners, I urge you, if you believe that you are going to be investing a lot of time on ULEARN, you're going to put your grades online, and we are actually hoping among ourselves lecturers, we want to try to minimize the number of grade entries that we have to make, and we want to have just one centralized platform which we can just store everything without having to open multiple windows. Let's try to also drop a line to your friendly ITMS support staff and ITMS management, and drop a line to your chairs to really request. Let us move towards backing up user data as well, so that we have a copy for every semester, every offering of the course. You retain a copy of all your students' assignments. Now, this will cost a little bit of money from UTP side. They have to have the necessary hard drives and all that. But in the long run, this will greatly facilitate our workflow. It will actually simplify your own workflow a lot, because you can just really focus on creating your assessments, creating the online grading, and storing the assessments. All that, this should be taken care of by ULearn system, and you don't actually need to scan in copies and then save copies, which we all do nowadays for our audit. So if I can just put a little bit of pitch, yeah, please canvas and lobby support from your chairs and ITMS, so that we can migrate towards ULearn, so that we can store a copy of all our students' assessments on the ULearn site itself, and move towards having all the grades integrated here. Because Puan Hanan had mentioned to me that one of the ITMS goals is they will want to actually integrate ULearn directly with the UCampus, so that any grades that you enter in ULearn will automatically be updated into UCampus. So the vision really is to have all of us just have a single point of grade entry, which is we enter all our grades into ULearn, and UCampus is automatically updated. So we don't have to have so many spreadsheets and Excel and all that. But this will need kind of a conviction and belief from all of us to move in this direction. And we also need to lobby and persuade our chairs and ITMS and the academic decision-making bodies in UTP to do this. But I believe that this will actually be a great benefit to all of us. Okay, any questions?
100% agree.
Yeah, because I see that the movement restriction has already pushed most of us to embrace online delivery of our material. We're already spending the time here. And if you were to read the opinions of some of the thinkers worldwide, people are predicting that after movement control and after the coronavirus, almost all higher education will be delivered online, because all the major universities in the world also have been forced to deliver their material online. We will see a tremendous and big shift to online education, which should lower the cost of education for students and all that. So whether we like it or not, after coronavirus, there will be a big shift in the way our industry functions and the way we compete. Yeah, so we should be ready for this change. I am actually done with all my material, and I would maybe allocate another couple of minutes just in case there are any final questions. I'm happy to repeat any part of the presentation for the benefit of those who have spent their time this morning listening to my sharing. So just feel free to raise any questions, or you can ask me to repeat a particular section. That would be fine. So I'm just waiting for additional questions from among the online audience. If there was any section or any topic in today's sharing that you would like me to repeat. So we're just going to give a couple of minutes more for people to just think about anything that they'd like me to go through again.
No questions?
Okay, thank you.
No questions? Okay.
Questions?
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Very good session. Very
Burning
informative.
questions. I think none of us have actually used this feature yet. So maybe once we start using the feature, we will have tons of questions for you, Eric.
Sure, Subhana. So
Yeah.
I'm also happy to have another like a Q&A clinic session in case
Or
people start to get the hang of this. And I also anticipate as more and more people use these, you will probably be more, there'll be many more experts among us, so we can also share among ourselves. Yeah, so I'm happy to also have another Q&A session at a later time.
thank you so much, Eric. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. So I
Sure.
think if there are no questions, I think we can end the session today. My big thank you to Eric for spending time with us today, Eric. We have recorded this session and it will be available in the CITAL YouTube channel as well.
Great, Subhana. I'm happy to share what I know, and I wish colleagues
For
best of luck.
next session soon. Thank you.
Okay, thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Okay, thank you all for your attention.
Well done. Super
Participation.
presentation.
Thank you. Well done.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you very much, all.
Thanks,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Eric.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, doctor.
Okay, great.